No, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Welcome here to Super Powered Pop with Dan Tortora and our contributor Ross Turetsky, hanging out with you in this Thor Love and Thunder spoiler review. So I'm going to do this for all of you people out there. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are going to give you spoilers. We're going to tell you what's going on. We're giving a full review of this movie. A lot of topics to get to on Super Powered Pop. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Super Powered Pop. That's powered, Powered. So find us at Super Powered Pop on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and superpoweredpop.com. Mr. Turetsky, how are you?
Doing very well. Welcome. Well, thank you for having me. And we got to see a movie like the good old days at Cinemark. Nice luxury recliners. This time with two of my kids, my two kids. And,
you got more children? You said two of them.
Two of them. I don't know where the rest of them. Those are the two I know about.
Did you father any Sean Kemp babies around the country?
Who knows? Those are secrets. Shh, I can't tell a soul. But no, it was a cool experience. We get to go to the movies, a little piece of normalcy after all the craziness of the pandemic. And LJ, my 2.5-year-old boy, he was a little antsy. For him, his first live action movie. He's seen only cartoon movies in the theaters, like the Minions and the Buzz Lightyear movie, the new one. So he was running amok at that theater at times. I had to calm him down. He was very interested in the back, up top, the projection screen thing, what's going on with the light. He wanted to get in there, break it up, and like smash the film or however they show it. He was up to shenanigans, but we got through it. It was a good old time, and we saw it at 11:50 in the morning movie, and it was I thought it was a very entertaining experience. It was nice, old school summer blockbuster movie, and to be able to see that and escape the 90-degree weather in northeastern Pennsylvania, I would take that any day. Plus, we got to hang out with you. We hadn't seen you in a while, and Dan and my kids, though, of course, they just thought of you as presents. They expect presents, so they're like, it's nice to see you, but basically it's like with me, I'm chopped liver compared to a nice present. They wanted their gifts, and they're very happy with them. They're wearing their Mickey and Minnie book bags every day, and I think Lulu might even wear it to school sometimes when she starts kindergarten next month.
Nice. Well, yeah, I'm very excited. Got my niches, Boy Meets World reference too. I got them a Mickey and Minnie book bag because they both have a bunch of Mickey and Minnie toys, and I thought, why get them their like 18th plush when you can just get them a book bag that's shaped as Mickey and Minnie and let them carry whatever they want wherever they go. And I had a Mickey book bag growing up as a kid, and it was Mickey wearing a book bag. So like my book bag was Mickey, and then Mickey had a book bag you could put stuff in, and I carried them everywhere that I went. So, I wanted to do something for the kids like I had, and I'm happy that, I got to bring that to them and finally get to see you. And yeah, Ross and I used to go to the movies when we were living in Pennsylvania together. We were living down the road from each other, but living in the same place. When we were down in PA, we would go see the movies every week. I told my mom, I said, we would go once a week, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. So a lot of times
films, the late night, we were night owls then. And so
back when you could only see a movie released at midnight. Back when it actually was a Friday release and not a Thursday release. So
it was legit. You had to be hardcore. It was like the old school Black Friday specials. You had to be up super early morning. Well, in this case, you had to be up super late at night, seeing like the premiere of The Dark Knight with the late great Heath Ledger and Christian Bale, of course. And you had to see it when it first premiered. And the Avengers movie, I still remember the guy getting up and saying, "We all know who that is. That's Thanos." And I'm like, who the heck? I didn't read all the comic books growing up. I read some of them, and I just thought he was a purple-looking Barney fella, and I didn't know he'd be such a big part of the Avengers and the MCU Marvel world. But we would watch those midnight premieres with the big lines to get into the movie, and it was chaos. And now these kids, they don't know. They watch these movies, they premiere at like 3 p.m. on a Thursday now, so it's not the same hardcore movie fan anymore.
No, and I think it's really funny how you say that, because I forgot about that, and until you said it, and then when you said it, that guy got up at the end of the Avengers movie, and he's like, how? He's like, everybody knows who that is. And he looked at us and he goes, that's Thanos. And he was like looking at us like, right, guys? And I looked at him and I went, and I was just like, but I mean, and that was back in the day. That was when they made him look a little bit more, you know, cartoony, more Barney-esque. He was not, so he was purplish pink. So, you know, because they've evolved Thanos. If you go back and you watch that, you know, that turn of the face, and if you watch him sitting in the chair and then you watch him going and grabbing the gauntlet and saying, fine, I'll do it myself. You know, they were playing up Thanos for a long time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the background. And when you go back and you look at it and you think about like this being a microwave society and people wanting everything right now and instantaneously, you know, it's crazy to think how patient we had to be. But in phase 4, and we're going to talk about Thor 4, Love and Thunder, but I do want to get to this first. Phase 4 doesn't seem to have any of that, right? Like, we think Scarlet Witch is a bad, we know that, I mean, Miss Marvel, there's a lot of background stuff going on of like Miss Marvel and Black Panther and Moon Knight all have these spiritual realms. They have these heaven and hellish places, these stepping off point, as the late Chadwick Boseman would call it. Black Panther, bless him in heaven. So Miss Chadwick, a lot of people need to understand he was not only a great Black Panther, he was a fantastic actor in general. Would have loved to meet him in person. Love the movie draft. I think it's the Cleveland Browns' best draft since 1999. And
oh yeah, Costa got all those superstar players that he got all his draft picks back. He got the steal of a century, the draft debut. I know all about that. And yeah, that's the other thing they would talk about is after seeing this Thor movie, the next Marvel movie that's on the docket, unless it gets delayed again, is supposed to be November 11th, Veterans Day, in about 4 months. Even though we have no trailers, we have only a few rumors about what the heck's going to happen in the movie. Yeah. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And as far as we know, he's not going to ever be recast in the MCU. The late great Chadwick Boseman. And we're not sure how they're going to technically honor him. I assume he'll be, unfortunately, T'Challa will be killed off in the movie. I assume there'll be some sort of funeral. There's rumors that the sister takes over and gets the Black Panther mantle. But we just know rumors. We have not seen a trailer yet. So you wonder, does it get delayed again? And if it sticks to November 11th, when do we start seeing some information about it? There was no, I'll give you this spoiler alert already. We saw about spoilers. You know how they have the end credits scene sometimes set up the next Marvel project. I know they also have a lot of the Marvel shows, Loki, Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, all that stuff. There was no teaser for Black Panther in it. So if you were hoping to get a little, taste of what Black Panther Wakanda Forever is going to be, we didn't get it there. So we still don't know. It's very mysterious. Ryan Coogler is the director, great young writer-director. I think they're in great hands with him. They were dealt a very tough blow, on a personal level. All those people were very close to him. I'm sure they were heartbroken and they wanted to honor him, the great Chadwick Boseman. So, but then even on a story level, they did not expect that they were going to have to tell a story without the main character, without the main actor, the main character. So I'm sure it was quite a challenge. It's not what they planned to do for the sequel, but I'm sure they found a way to make the best out of a very tough situation. So I'm very curious how they handled it, how sensitive they are about it. And I think there's going to probably be a few tears shed in that one, especially because these actors, I think, who really were affected by him and really loved and cared about him, it will feel like a true, if they have a funeral scene in the movie, it will feel like they were at his funeral all over again, because I think those are going to be real emotions when they do display that.
Yeah, and the thing is that they'll have to do some type of honoring in this movie, and I'm sure they'll do it beautifully, because Ryan Coogler's first film, the first Black Panther, was phenomenal. And I became a Black Panther fan a couple of years before the movie came out, and I kind of just I got to a point where I didn't think the movie was going to happen, because they kept pushing it, and I was like, okay, are they going to do this? Is this going to be a reality? And then when it came out and we got to actually see it, it was done so incredibly beautiful that you look at it, and if you watch Miss Marvel, you see elements, and if you watch, different like fight scenes and whatnot, and the way that they handled everything, it's got, there's that Iron Man technology. There's that, there's these beautiful scenic places, and you talk about like looking at Moon Knight. I feel like Black Panther has had a an effect on so many different shows. And I think, you know, what they need to do to kind of represent him and appreciate him is something that, I mean, I'm sure they'll do it well. I'm sure they'll be, you know, it'll be special. The thing that's hard for us on screen, because obviously in real life, Chadwick Boseman passing away is the worst part of it. But on screen, we've already lost him, right? We lost him in the blip. And, you know, when he goes and the two moments, and the thing is, so I'm a big Black Panther fan, and I've been a Spider-Man fan since I was little, and they killed them both in Endgame temporarily, sent them to the soul realm or whatever. And we haven't really gone into the fact that each stone could have its own realm. We know that the soul stone has the soul realm. The keeper of the soul stone and the soul realm is Adam Warlock. And what you learn in the comic books with Adam Warlock, who's coming in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, is that he can actually, and I don't know if they're going to do this in the movie, but he can actually go back and forth between the soul realm and, you know, and being alive, so to speak, right? And he can bring people with him. So if you and I died and we went to the soul realm, he can put himself and the two of us in somebody else's bodies, and we can be reborn. So, you know, it's just interesting what's going to happen here. But looking at Black Panther and where we've come and where we are, they have to honor him, and I know that they will. But my long prediction that I've had for, I want to say I've had it for over a year now, was that when he passed away, Shuri, his sister, is going to become Black Panther eventually. I think Killmonger is going to come back, and we know that Killmonger's in the What If series, and the What If series is canon because we did see, even though they didn't dive into it, we did see, you know, coming out of Doctor Strange, these snakes or dragons and whatnot. And that's a direct reference back to it. So I do think that we're going.
Killmonger will find a way, whether it's a flashback or they somehow bring him back from the dead, he will make an appearance, whether that means he's good, bad. He at times a very sympathetic bad guy, if you remember from the original one, because there was, you know, he went a little too far with what he was doing, hurting innocent people, but he did have a point trying to help people, and people were, you know, did him wrong and stuff like that. So you kind of feel sympathetic for him, kind of like up above us, the Christian Bale in this movie, Gorr the Butcher, the God Butcher. He does some horrible things. He's killing people. That's, of course, that's wrong. You feel bad because there were certain circumstances. You can understand why a good person can be pushed too far and do something bad and doesn't realize they've gone too far because they were wrong and they were trying to correct that, and they just go crazy. But you actually feel for them because they did lose someone important to them, and they do have a point. It's not like they're just absolutely insane from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, you know, and I think that Killmonger, I thought he was going to make a return before the What If series. I felt like it was going to happen, but we got to see him take the stones, and we've learned that there are infinity stones in each universe, that they don't work the same, because they tried to destroy the stones when they went to the other universe, and then Ultron was like, hey, you know, that doesn't work here because, you know, the stones are in each universe, and so they can't be, you can't take something from your universe and use it to ruin the stones or kill the stones from that universe. You have to do something within that universe. So, you know, we know that he has them. We know he has like Ultron tech, and we know he's coming back, or he is alive somewhere in the multiverse. I thought Killmonger was coming back. I thought they'd find a way to resurrect him, and I believe that he'll take up the mantle of the Black Panther, and then eventually it'll go to Shuri. But then Disney off screen was having allegedly issues with the actress playing Shuri
There's allegedly vaccine issues.
Yeah, and so what they're going to do with the story, who knows? But apparently, I mean, she hasn't been taken out of it. I thought it was going to be Black Panther would go from Chadwick Boseman to Michael B. Jordan. We would see Killmonger take it over, and then eventually go to Shuri. There might be a change in the story if they're not going to have Shuri do it. Maybe they give it to M'Baku, but you know,
that's another rumor. Yeah, and then she also had an onset injury, so they had to delay filming for a while. But as of now, they're claiming this is coming out in November, but we don't know much about it besides rumors.
Well, and that's the thing is, you know, with these conventions going on and whatnot, is that we'll hopefully see them. Disney is doing a convention where they're going to hopefully release some stuff, and then they're actually doing a separate Disney Plus convention. So, and then I'll be at New York Comic Con, God willing, and then we know, on both coasts there'll be different things going on. So definitely excited for what's going on in the background of all of this. But to get back to Thor: Love and Thunder, this was an interesting movie, and it was an interesting thing to kind of sift through. The first piece, we got a lot of different topics to get to, but do you think here on Superpowered Pop with Ross Turetsky and myself, Dan Tortora, did this fit in with the other 3 Thor movies, in your opinion, with that beautiful blonde-haired Thor? Thor, and when I ask if it fits in with the other movies, I think it's only fitting that I find my way to bring in the ether. So if I can show you this, if I may, and it's always hard for me to command it. Sometimes it works, and this really does feel realistic because I have to find a way to summon the ether. So let me see if I can summon it. I have to rub its belly. It's very strange how it wants to work and then it doesn't want to work, but I'm going to see if I can summon the ether here and hopefully do it. And it worked 1,000 times when I was showing LJ, but yeah, so we are in Thor: Love and Thunder. Do you feel that this Thor movie fit any of the other ones?
I did. I think it was a little wild. I definitely see a different tone from the first 2 movies from different directors than I can never pronounce his name right. The guy who's the voice of Korg, the director, right? Yeah, Wakiti. He has a very funny guy. He injects a lot of humor in every project he does, and that's a good thing. He has a very distinct voice. He's from New Zealand. Very goofy. He's even in the new Buzz Lightyear movie playing a goofy character. So there definitely is a lot more humor once he started to take over the helm as the director in the 3rd movie, Ragnarok, which critics love, fans love. I think it has a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. Incredible Hulk was mixed in there. And some people didn't really think Planet Hulk, they did enough with that. So there's definitely a lot more humor in the movie. But yeah, when I think about it, you can still see the connection of it. And I really did because it does bring back, as it brings back Jane Foster, you could see the connection to the first 2 movies. It's a whole different story. I don't know what you thought. I thought, though, at times, though, it's a little too much humor. I think there's maybe about 25% of decent action, and then there's Marvel's known for humor. Don't get me wrong. Iron Man, Tony Stark was throwing out one-liners throughout all of it. At times, this is like a romantic comedy, though, because these 2 ex-lovers above me, Jane and Thor, there it is. They're basically they broke up, they drifted apart, and they reunite under very weird circumstances. And it's based on the story where she has terminal stage 4 cancer. They reunite. She somehow, even though we discussed this, they don't show you how she transforms to Mighty Thor. And she says in the movie, she tells Gorr the Butcher, "I am not Lady Thor. I am Mighty Thor. Don't take anything away from her." They never show that transformation. And then she seems very healthy and strong when she is that, but it drains a lot out of her. So it's an interesting storyline. And it's great to see her back, because to see her friend, the girl of Kat Dennings from Two Broke Girls in it, there you could see parts from the first 2 movies, but the first 2 movies had a few things that were humorous. I don't know what you thought. I thought the sequel, Dark World, was pretty much garbage. I don't know. I thought that was straight up garbage. I thought it was pretty bad. It's one of the worst Marvel movies that they've made in recent years. There's a few decent scenes. I thought the first movie was good. It was like a fish out of water scene movie where he comes from his Asgardian god world and he comes to Earth, falls in love with this beautiful scientist, and there's a lot of interesting things. The second one I thought took a really weird turn, didn't have a good bad guys. I thought when the new director took over in the third one, Ragnarok, he did a great job, made it very funny, but there was a good combination of humor and action in it. Kate Blanchett was a great bad guy in that movie. This one, I think there probably was a little too much humor in it. I think they were trying to be too tongue-in-cheek. And I think at times, Takiti doesn't really care necessarily about that he's making a superhero movie. I don't know if he thinks if it's truly a superhero movie. For him, I think that he's making a comedy, like a romantic comedy. There's even a kind of a meta scene where they show in Asgard, they put on plays talking about Thor, where Matt Damon is in this movie, Melissa McCarthy, her husband's in this movie, and I finally realized who that other guy was. That's one of Hemsworth's brother, Chris Hemsworth, not the other Hemsworth who's in Hunger Games. This is a different Hemsworth, not Liam Hemsworth. So they get these guys, they put on like a stage performance, and they're kind of like making a joke. It's almost like a Saturday Night Live sketch. I saw this online. They mentioned this. It almost reminds me of a parody, like a Mighty Python or SNL sketch. But yet you're supposed to take it seriously. And then there is a weird tonal shift because when Christian Bale comes on, he's no nonsense. He like snaps at a drop of a hat. You don't know if he's going to snap your neck, but he's very much underused in this movie. I know we'll talk about this a little later. He goes from he's sinister bad guy, kind of you don't want to mess with him because he's going to scare the heck out of you, even the children. There's a children element in this movie that's very strange as well. But then the rest of it is basically just humorous and silly and kind of stupid. But then there's this emotional stuff with Jane and with the cancer, and then reuniting her and Thor and trying to have love, even if their time on Earth together is limited. So the tone in all four movies are kind of different. I definitely think the first two were not as funny. These are more humorous, more focused on humor, but less with the action. And it just, like I said, they take a bad guy who could be an all-time great bad guy, and you know Christian Bale can bring it. He is sinister as can be. You know, former Batman, and he's going for like Heath Ledger, crazy Joker here, almost like It from, playing a sinister clown in this movie with the makeup. And he's maybe in the movie for 20 minutes. So he's kind of misused because when he's in it, he's great, but not used enough. And I don't know if you thought, I thought I was watching at times a Hallmark romantic comedy movie.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot in there, and I do want to show this now that I finally got it to work. So this is the ether. So this is from Thor: The Dark World, and I think so many people weren't fans of Thor: The Dark World and consider it the worst Marvel movie ever made. I think
they were fighting like elf guys. What I remember, I've only saw the movie once. I never wanted to rewatch it again. They were fighting like it was like very dimly lit, and they looked like elves. They were fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of looked like it was almost like a Lord of the Rings connection to it, like a Lord of the Rings meets Marvel. And I mean, I think it was the worst critically responded to Marvel movie. It was like the lowest rating or whatever, but at the same time it introduced the Reality Stone. And I think it's funny that the movie that people consider out of almost 30 movies that Marvel's made in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that movie that brings us one of the 6 Infinity Stones, that would be such a bad movie. But there's the thought process, and I would love for them, and this is a mistake that I think they made in this, and you mentioned a lot of stuff, so I'm going to unpack some of it here as we talk about Thor: Love and Thunder. But more Thor action figures.
I have lots of toys. This is show and tell. I'm in kindergarten here. This is fun times. Look at the sexy eye patch. Let me straighten his head. I try not to twist his head off.
Yeah. I will say in Thor: Love and Thunder, with all the comedy stuff, that getting to see Melissa McCarthy, because I forgot that she was actually put on the cast list. The fact that she got to play Hela was pretty awesome. And
I did not know at all she was going to be in it. I look up this stuff and I did not see it.
I forgot that she was going to be in the movie. So that was probably the best reveal of the movie, to be completely honest, besides.
And Matt Damon seemed to really be enjoying himself. He really was having a field day out there.
I think that might be Matt Damon's tour de force, acting within an acting in a movie about acting. So, but yeah, I mean, to unpack some of the stuff that you said, listen, one of the mistakes that I think they made in this movie is that, we don't see Jane become the mighty Thor, and there's been set photos that show that she's like lifted off the ground and she's kind of like flailing her body and whatnot. So there was a scene that was going to potentially be there, but the whole point of, and they say, well, we didn't want to show that to you. Maybe they didn't want to show it because, Taika Waititi, the director, and maybe the entire group there didn't want to show it because they wanted to reveal it in the fight scene where Mjolnir comes to her. But here's my rebuttal to this, and I said this to you in the movie theater. There is no reveal because as Marvel has done since Age of Ultron, they show way too much in the previews to the point where I feel like I've seen the whole movie. I remember going to Age of Ultron going, I saw this whole movie. Like I saw this entire movie. I saw what Ultron looked like. I saw fight scenes, and it's really frustrating. Also with Miss Marvel, that thank God I watched it when I did. There's two things I told you, and we're not going to spoil it in here. We'll talk about Miss Marvel another time. But there's two things I wanted to happen in the Miss Marvel season 1 finale, and one of them definitely happened. One of them kind of happened in its own way, but like within days, Marvel's Instagram was showing us all of these reveals, and I was like, what a jerk. Like, why would you show me?
Well, there was no like spoiler alert either. I came up on my Facebook feed because I'm still trying to finish up season 1. My daughter likes to watch it. She just turned 5, and she really likes the female empowerment, inspirational superhero figures. Less than 2 days after it premiered the finale this week, they showed you the big reveal. Yeah, and I'm not even gonna say it. Just they showed it, and I'm like, and even people in the comment section, you're a jerk. Why would you show this without warning people you're giving out the spoiler? And we maybe haven't seen it all yet. Not everyone watches this show the second it airs that day. Why the next day are you showing it?
Well, and that's the thing. Like I watched it. I mean, it aired on Wednesday. I think I watched it on Thursday, and then by Friday, it was on their Instagram. And I looked at it and I was like, if I saw this 4-second clip, like this 4-second thing that Marvel put together on their social media and had not seen the show, I, like everybody else, would have been outrageously upset about it. And so, I think in this movie, when they're like, oh, well, maybe we didn't show you her becoming Thor because we wanted it to be a bigger reveal. But as you realized in the movie, right, Spider-Man No Way Home did it right. Because if you went to that movie and you went within like the first 3 days, something like that, for opening weekend.
Oh, with the 3 Spider-Man, yeah.
You were with a lot of people in that theater that were watching it for the first time. And so when we saw Daredevil, people went crazy. And when you reveal the mighty Thor in Thor Love and Thunder, dead silence in the theater.
Yes.
And that's because we all saw her. She's here on the poster, right?
Yeah.
She's right here on the poster. And we saw her multiple times. It was in like the first trailer, and the thing comes back and you hear that music. So this whole we wanted to save her reveal for the fight scene.
There was no mystery to it.
Right. You played her. What do you mean save it? You've been playing it on all of your, TV clips and all this stuff you've been putting out on social media, over a month before the movie came out. And so, I thought seeing her turn into the mighty Thor would have been impressive, because that's one thing we didn't see in the previews. God forbid they don't show us everything. And on top of that, she calls herself the mighty Thor in a very awkward way. And there's a bunch of story holes in this movie. And Taika Waititi, there was the notion that when Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie, and Taika Waititi, when they were talking about this, that there was a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor, and that making this movie, was it Taika's, was it him that was doing it, or was it Kevin Feige, or who were ultimately making these decisions on what gets cut out? And the whole I'm mighty Thor, when she's laying in bed and she goes, well, I'm the mighty Thor, I have to come fight with you because I'm the mighty Thor. And I'm going, why would you pick that word? There's no connection back to did this mean something to her? You could have had a flashback of her mom with cancer, and right before her mom died, she could say, well, you're my mighty Jane.
And that would be good. That would make more sense. You even mentioned, because there's some cool narration that's sometimes funny, sometimes very empowering, where they almost telling you an Aesop's fable, telling you the story of the legend of Thor, and then the legend of mighty Thor, the legend of Jane. And Corey, the course director, is in a funny way is narrating it. So that would have been cool. At the end, I'll give you the spoiler. They have a statue of her, how she sacrificed herself and helped save all those kids of Asgard, and help save humanity and the world and all that stuff, all that great stuff. And that would make sense if you then, at the very end, call her, this is the legend of the mighty Thor. And you show the very powerful music in the background, in the backdrop, and you show the statue of her holding the hammer, and that she's a hero. She's a savior. She's going up to Valhalla, and she'll be remembered for the ages, and she'll now get to live out the rest of her days
in like a Viking heaven, in a perfect utopia society. She'll never fully die. Maybe one day she'll even reunite with Thor if he ever gets to Valhalla together. That would make sense. Like the last line of the movie could say, "This is the legend of the mighty Thor," and then you end the movie there, and then you could do your post-credit scenes. That would be powerful. Get some, it really would juice up that part of the whole part of the story. To just call someone the mighty Thor without showing them earning that title before they even save the day kind of makes no sense, and it loses its meaning. It needs to be more impactful.
Well, and I'm not going to give it away, but if you watch Miss Marvel and you see the 6 episodes, you see like the evolution of her and how she became who she is because of the people around her that love her actually kind of like have a part in her becoming who she is. And I said to you that at the end of this movie that, looking at this and looking at the mighty Thor at the end of it, when Korg starts the movie and says, "Let me tell you the legend of Thor," and at the end of it, he says, "Let me tell you the legend of the mighty Thor," that I thought that that's when they should have revealed that she's the mighty Thor. When it cuts to black and he says, and Korg says, "Let me tell you the legend of the mighty Thor." And then when you see her statue, that would have been so powerful. It would have been emotional. She called herself mighty a couple times before. It didn't fit. Or if, within all of this, when Thor's holding her in that pool with eternity, when he's holding her and he kisses her, and right before she passes away, he says, "You really are the mighty Thor." Like, if there had been, you know what I mean? And I think the thing when she said, "I finally figured out my catchphrase," I think what she whispered in his ear was "F cancer." That's what I think.
That would have been cool. Yeah, because she whispered. You don't get to hear that as the
I think she said "F cancer." That's
what I would. I in my mind, for people, everyone in some way or another, unfortunately, is affected by this horrible by cancer, whether it be family, close relatives, friends. At some point, it's gonna creep into our lives terribly. So yeah, I think that'd be awesome. That would be kind of the line that I would think Ryan Reynolds, who now is in the Marvel universe as Deadpool, who's someone in the first movie was had cancer and was trying to survive it. He would be a guy who definitely would say "F cancer" in that situation. That this thing will not take me down, even if you don't survive it. That you did not get defeated by it, and you overcame that obstacle. And I think that would be very powerful too. So I almost wish that if that was the line, and I think that would be an awesome line, they would have had that, because I think that would be pretty cool to say, "You didn't defeat me, and I fought to the end to battle this horrible disease."
Whether or not that was like what it was, right? Because I think Taika Waititi left it up to us to figure out.
But that's what it should be. That's what it should be. I like that.
If I was the director of this movie, I would say, "Oh, she said F cancer." And it's funny because as soon as I saw her whisper in Thor's ear, and she said, "I have my catchphrase," and he smiled and he said, "That's perfect." The only thing in my head, if I was the writer or the director, was that she said F cancer. Yeah. And I think it would be so powerful. I think it would be so moving to everybody that's had to, deal with it or had somebody that.
Well, even in the Marvel world, because when you hear stage 4 cancer, that's what brought me in my mind of a horrible thing that happened to Chadwick Boseman. That for most people, even people he worked with, unless you were close friends and family, maybe a handful of people basically knew that he was sick. He had stage 4 colon cancer for 4 years while he battled it. Was doing these action movies, doing these drama movies, we're doing very physical stunts, and we didn't know the whole time.
He didn't tell Marvel.
Yeah, I think they said that Kevin Feige, he found out about it almost like a rumor the day he ended up passing away, that it was kept a secret. Everyone he worked with had no idea. So my mind unfortunately goes to Chadwick Boseman having stage 4 cancer, and that he had just passed away. And then we know that Black Panther's coming next, and how tough that's going to be to watch him pass away again. So yeah, that's the mindset. But yeah, the whole time I'm like, this guy was like a true hero, because he was fighting and was this iconic figure and doing all these great movies. Meanwhile, he was in between them going to chemo sessions and was in a terrible physical state, and he was dealing with this horrible disease. And so my mind unfortunately went there, and I almost feel like in my mind, hopefully Chadwick at some point said F cancer, because it was a terrible break he got, and he fought to the end.
Yeah, and it's a great point to go back to that. And so, I mean, seeing her story come through, I feel like they did Jane dirty, and Marvel has had this issue of making a really strong female superhero,
and they killed them all.
And I think with Captain Marvel, they're doing it. I think with Miss Marvel, they're doing it in a younger Avenger. But when we see some of these other things, when we see the Scarlet Witch, they've had an issue of not really doing her diligence and doing her right. I think Doctor Strange was rushed. And, it always makes me concerned when they are doing a movie and then they say, oh, well, we came back and did a bunch of reshoots. And then like right before the movie came out, they're like, oh, we cut a ton of stuff out of here. And, we cut out cameos potentially and this and that. And there was a thought that like Deadpool would be in it. And then like Tom Cruise is another version of Iron Man, and different things that people were talking about that were supposed to maybe happen. And so, that to me was frustrating to go through that movie and say, okay, there's all these plot holes. But I think in Thor Love and Thunder, it was even worse. And with Jane's story, it's like she's sick. She the book kind of rumbles to her. She opens it up to Mjolnir and she reads about it. And it says like it gave him great strength and it helped them to stay healthy and yada, yada. And then she goes and she looks at it. And the thing that I find really weird is here is this heavily protected weapon of Asgard that was
glass.
that was given. What'd you say?
It was in the glass, and then how the heck did she get it out?
And the thing is, it's sitting there, and you can see in the distance that in this circular place where Mjolnir is, there are guards. There's like 2 guards at different places within this. Nobody said anything to her. Nobody said, ma'am, you need to keep moving. Nobody said, show's over. Everybody's silent while she's looking at it. And that if a security guard's there and somebody stays with something in a museum, they're going to go, hey, you need to leave, because now they're worried that something's going to happen with this. So, the fact that nobody told her to leave, that was weird to me, because that just kind of like defeats the purpose of having security guards. And then the fact that we didn't see her transform, we don't see why she's called Mighty. And like I said, there's easy fixes. Have her mom call her Mighty. But when she says, I'm the mighty Thor, it had no weight to it. And it had, even if she said, I feel like in order to fight this cancer, I've had to have great might. And like she says it, and then later on Thor says it to her, or they just save it for Korg. What happened in this movie, and Taika Waititi, they talk about this, because he makes these Thor movies a comedy, and he was kind of clear about Thor Ragnarok, which is not funny, this hell in Asgard, so to speak. This whole need for him to be funny all the time and make it funny and funny and funny. It's
great, but it's too much. He even describes it. He says this is a romantic comedy. This is like a Hallmark movie in his mind.
And Thor and Chris Hemsworth talked about that, and that plays Thor. And I just, I was apprehensive about Thor Ragnarok because it was different, right? The first Thor movie, and I went back and I watched, and by the way, folks, you don't have to go back and watch any of the Thor movies to prepare for this movie, because it just doesn't, it doesn't flow at all. And I went back to prepare, right? I went back to try and be a good Marvel student. And I go back and I'm watching this, and I go back to the first Thor, and I just, first and foremost, when you go back and you watch Sir Anthony Hopkins, and you see, you see what this world is like, and you see, the fact that, as an actor, Anthony Hopkins is incredible. He'll always be, Hannibal Lecter. But when Thor looks at him and he says, as king, and he goes, but you're not a king yet. And and when he looks at him, he's like, but you're not a king. And the way he said it, and like, and by the way, this is the first Thor movie that does not have Loki. There's flashbacks, but this is the first Thor movie where we don't see the God of Mischief. And that to me was ridiculous, because
they make jokes about how many times he's died and come back, and of course he has his own Disney Plus show. Did you see he did have a cool, almost like a lower back tramp stamp tattoo that said R.I.P. Loki? That was kind of a funny nod, but it was weird not to have Loki in the movie at all.
Yeah, so there's no Loki in this movie, and he's the one that started off this like Matt Damon, this world of where the the brothers and whatnot. And and the, you know, and the Hemsworth brother that was in it, Luke Hemsworth, you know, to see Luke and Matt Damon act this out, and Melissa McCarthy and whatnot, you know, this started in the last movie. The thing about Thor Ragnarok, it was such a detraction from what they were heading in, the seriousness of the God of Thunder. And then Taika Waititi took Thor Ragnarok and doubled down in Love and Thunder, and really just like, he didn't allow you to have an emotion. And I know that this has been talked about in other places, and this is not me stealing this. It's called having the same opinion, because I watched this and looking at it, I mean, he didn't let you hurt. He didn't let you. I saw somebody talk about this movie and it's like, oh my God, I cried and I was beside myself and I was just sitting in the theater, like so emotional. And I was sitting here going, why? I mean, every time you're about to feel an emotion, you're about to cry, Taika would cut it off.
Then there's a joke, makes it silly.
Right. And it was like, it was almost like wanting to interview Taika after it, going like, are you somebody who's had something happen to you as a child, and every time you go to deal with it, you just stop? Because it's just a very weird, it's like when you go to therapy and somebody's like, well, talk to me about your dad. And you start to like unearth things, and then they just like make a joke, or they say, oh, well, time's up in this session, and then they send you home. That's what it felt like. It was like, we're getting somewhere, we stop. And we didn't stop. We stopped abruptly, and there was no time to fall in love. There was no time to feel the pain. There was no time to be concerned. But I will say, just like, and obviously this is a better movie than that, but when Fox brought back the Fantastic Four and made it a very serious movie, there's one scene in that entire movie that was fantastic. And that was Dr. Doom becoming Dr. Doom. And I think it's one of the greatest, you know, you talk about hallway scenes, and, you know, the Punisher, when he's in jail and he's just killing everybody in his cell block, and that you have Daredevil fighting a bunch of times in a hallway. Well, there's a hallway scene with Dr. Doom in the newer Fantastic Four. And I mean, he's just like killing everybody that's there, squeezing your head, throwing you blood, and just flashing the lights. And he's just walking down this corridor. And I think that's the Dr. Doom I want to see. And I thought that was a great element of that movie. That brings me to the fact that Christian Bale, and for whatever reason, I'm a very tan person, but the lighting in my studio today is making me look like Christian Bale. But in Gorr the God Butcher, I saw a real, true Marvel villain. And as you know, this is a spoiler show. Just like what they did to build up Jane and throw her in the trash, they kill Gorr the God Butcher. And here's the thing about Gorr the God Butcher. He doesn't butcher any gods except for the first 2 minutes of the movie. Like,
yes.
he butchered.
When you were walking into the theater, that's when he was doing it, because they wouldn't. And I get his motivation. I have a daughter too. His daughter's dying, and he's praying to the gods, you know, save my child, or can you find a way to make her have an eternal life or a resting place so she could be at ease? And they laugh in his face saying, oh, you know, he's a loyal follower. We don't care about you. You're basically for our amusement. And the gods have gotten lazy. Kind of like we'll talk about with Russell Crowe as Zeus, which he's prancing about with his big pregnant belly. He looks like he's gotten pregnant, Russell Crowe, not like the Gladiator cut Russell Crowe. But he's big and beautiful. And so the gods
cheerleader, because he's got the big beer gut, and then
he's got a skirt
dress. Yeah.
Yeah, so the gods have gotten all fat and mighty, and they have egos about them that they don't have to care about anyone but themselves. And then you can understand that he renounced his loyalty to the gods, and he goes crazy, Christian Bale's character, because you lose your child, you lose your way, you believe these gods will protect you, and you find out they don't care a thing about you. So he goes too far, of course. He's like, I'm going to wipe out every god off the face of the of the world, basically off the planet. But you can understand his motivation. But like I said, the humor at times it's great, but at times it's too much, because this performance could have been an all-time performance. Because a lot of times in these superhero movies, whether it be Marvel or DC, especially Marvel, the bad guys aren't that good. Besides like Thanos, and Loki has been like a good guy / bad guy. They're usually like, there's these great mighty warriors with a crappy bad guy, like, you know, Ultron in Age of Ultron is a crappy bad guy, and the Thor elves are a crappy bad guy.
Ultron is such a fantastical villain. He's artificial intelligence. He can transform and send himself anywhere. Like, why does Marvel introduce these incredible villains, these incredibly powerful villains, and then just easily murder them? Outside of Thanos, everybody dies. Everybody gets killed. And I'm going to tell Marvel something that you need to understand. If you want to say you're better than Sony and you're better than Fox and yada, yada, let me be clear with you on something. When you bring Doctor Doom, you better have him for 10 movies, because Doctor Doom is Fantastic Four. Doctor Doom is Battle World. Doctor Doom is all these. He's all about incursions, what we were hearing Reed Richards talk about in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Doom is not just a bad guy. He's not just a villain. He is a consistent background part of the cinematic universe. If you bring in Kang the Conqueror and you kill him in Jonathan Majors, who did a fantastic job in Loki, if you go and kill Kang the Conqueror, like, you're an idiot. But again, you've killed Ultron.
I wouldn't be shocked if they do kill him off after one movie. It is ridiculous, but it wouldn't surprise me in what Disney and Marvel's mindset is.
And I mean, and that's the thing, is Disney/Marvel has a villain problem. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why Marvel Studios has a villain problem. It's because Disney owns Marvel Studios. Now, I love Disney, but Disney is all about, let's make it light and airy and hoppy and poppy. That's not how this is. And I'm extremely concerned for Deadpool 3 because it's Disney. And what really, by the way, when they re-released Deadpool 2 and they made it PG-13, I did not even consider wasting my time. And so looking at, because Deadpool, it's that type of guy. That's who he is. When you're going to make a comic book movie, and somebody said this to me a long time ago, and I think they're 1,000,000% wrong. They said, you don't make comic book movies for comic book fans, which to me sounds idiotic, right? You don't make Lifetime movies for people that love to see the love and whatever, but you don't make comic book movies for comic book fans. They said to me, they said, comic book fans are 1% of the world. You're making the movie for the other 99% where they've never read the comic book, but you want to make it like fun and whatever. And I disagree, because the most avid people that are going to support and push those movies are your comic book fans. Now, do you want to make a movie that's universally popular? Yes, you do. But you have to stay true to the characters, because, and look at it. If the movie was for the other 99% and not for that 1%, then why did the first Hulk fail, right? Why did Thor: The Dark World not? I mean, if you don't stay true to the characters, people are going to respond and they're going to have issue with it, right? Why did people not? What is the one thing you hear about the Andrew Garfield movies? He was too cool. He wasn't an awkward kid. He wasn't an awkward high school kid. He was too cool of a Spider-Man, and he's supposed to be uncomfortable. He's supposed to be socially awkward, and they thought that he was like too cool of a person. So when you hear these complaints and these critical reviews of these movies, they're always saying it didn't fit the comics. Why did Fantastic Four fall this last time? Because it didn't fit the comics. So if the comic book people are 1%, then why are all these movies that are atrociously bad and critically not acclaimed and don't make the money like the other ones make? Because they didn't stay true to the character. Well, who would care about that? The comic book people. So to me, you have to stay true, and you have to, give that weight to this. And I didn't read Thor growing up, but when you think about the God of Thunder, they messed with this movie and the whole Mighty Thor story, which is a more recent story. They stayed true to Jane having stage 4 cancer. They stayed true that the more times she uses Mjolnir, the more chance she, the more it takes from her, because it sucks her life energy. And so then she can't fight the cancer. So every time she grabs Mjolnir and she's fine, when she puts it down, her body's even worse. So she gets healthy for the time that she's Thor, but she gets more and more sick after that. And, I think that that's a tragic story in and of itself, but I wanted to see Jane beyond that. And I wanted to see Jane continue to grow. And Gorr the God Butcher, with all due respect, Marvel should have never done it, because his Necrosword comes from Null. Null is the leader of the symbiotes the sword is a symbiote. It's liquefied. It can change and move. And the fact that they would even make a movie about something that's connected to the symbiotes that they have no control over makes no sense to me. Call it a different sword. But at the end of Eternals, spoiler alert, we see Excalibur, and Excalibur looks like a symbiote, and it actually moves in black toward the finger of Dane, who becomes the Black Knight, and it moves toward him. So if you could do that with that sword, then why did you make this look like any old metal sword? It's like you did right by Excalibur, but you didn't do it with the Necrosword. But the Necrosword is what it's all about, but you can't use it because of the symbiotes, and you can't have Null. And why would you? You're taking Marvel and you're turning Marvel toward a symbiote story, toward Venom, toward all that stuff, but you have no rights to it. So I just don't understand that
Disney has the money. Just show them the money. I know you're saying they don't want to have to share Thor and another character. They already have to fight over Spider-Man and have to share with them, and they're always disputing. We put too much effort and money into it, and we get little in return because Sony still has the rights. In a perfect world, I'm sure they would love to buy all their movie characters back, and they wouldn't have to deal with Sony. But you have the money, just like with the Yankees or the Cowboys or a very expensive sports team. You could buy your way out of the situation. If you want something in the movie to look a certain way, Disney, pay some money, have a temporary deal until the movie's over, and move on. Or don't use it at all. But it's not an excuse to say, oh, another one owns the rights. Disney and Marvel could make that problem go away pretty quickly if they just called on the phone, didn't let their egos get in the way, and they just paid them some money, but they're too cheap, and they're like, we're going to make a fortune anyway. We can make a plain-looking sword. We don't have to care about how realistic it might look to the story.
Yeah, and like I said, Disney has a villain problem, and this whole like Disneyfying movies. You buy Star Wars from Lucasfilm, and
It has to be so family friendly. But that's what I was saying with this was finally a good bad guy, but he's underused, and he's maybe in the movie for 20 minutes. But Christian Bale, like I expected, brought it. When he had scenes this movie, he was terrifying. Especially when he was like talking to those Asgard children.
Yeah.
He was kind of like a creepy Pennywise it clown, devilish clown who you didn't know if he was going to attack and hurt the children or if he was just being menacing and scaring them. He looked at any moment he could snap and he could take everyone out in that movie, and you didn't want to cross him. You didn't want to mess with him. So you take that and you kind of waste him, and now you kill him off by the end of the movie. Yeah. And now he's done. But he was a great bad guy, and he was great for what he could do. And then he's also thrown into a romantic comedy where he has nothing to do with that part of the story. So he's kind of misused in a movie where I almost want to see a movie or a Disney Plus series. They probably won't do it, where it's just based on him, because he would be terrifying and it would scare the heck out of people. It would be for mature audiences. Imagine if you made this rated R, like what they claim Deadpool would do, and Disney got out of the way the family friendly thing for him. He would be one of the most terrifying villains you've ever seen in cinematic history.
Well, and if you let him actually have the real Necrosword, could you imagine if Disney
and let him actually kill the bad guys or kill the gods? They don't really. They reference it basically. They say he's doing it, and they don't show you. That's basically how Disney got away with it without making it a dark rated R film.
And it would be to me, it would be a great, like you said, have it be a show. I would love if Disney went out to one of these conventions and they're just like, and nobody knew something was getting released, and all of a sudden you see a giant black screen and the black screen's like flashing, and then you just see, like, as it flashes on different elements, you just see it say Gorr, and then you see like the Venom black symbiote thing kind of crawl over it, and it says like Gorr God Butcher, and then we find out it's going to be a show. Because Disney's got the Punisher on there from Netflix and whatnot. So to me, I would love to see a show that chronicles this, to right the character's wrongs. Now, Christian Bale, who, this is his first time he's showing up in a Marvel movie, I don't think he abided by what Marvel typically asks you to do in interviews, and I don't think he genuinely cares.
I don't think he does care. He's a method actor. He does as he pleases. We all know about Shane and his antics on the Terminator movie and some of his other things. Like, he's very intense. He might beat up his co-stars, his mom and dad during his mom and sister during a movie premiere, allegedly. He's quite an interesting character, but I also agree with you, though, that TV show, you don't have to rush it as much as a movie. But Christian Bale, you could talk about it. He doesn't really give a crap what Disney wants to do.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, he did these interviews where he said, there was so many things that and I'm paraphrasing, but he was talking about like there's so many things he left on the floor. There was these gods that, like that he went and killed. There was different things that he did. And there's that one scene when you talk about like the Pennywise factor where, you see Heimdall's son, Axel, that's there talking about it. And he's sitting there and he's telling all the kids, and it's kind of like a Peter Pan element, right? And he's sitting there and he's telling all of them the story about Thor and this and that. And then all of a sudden you see those yellow eyes like Pennywise, and you see him in the dark kind of creeping like this, and he has this like weird body movement, kind of like a Pennywise, kind of like the Ring, kind of like this weird feel. And he's like, oh, tell me more. And then he comes out and he's like, oh, so you guys like seeing heads get cut off. And then he like manifests this three-eyed snake, and he picks it up and he cuts its head off and he holds it and throws it at him. That 100% is the Pennywise we just saw in It Chapter 1 and 2 that just came out recently. I mean, that is what it is. And to see his character like that, I'm going, okay, so he can creep out the children, cut off the head of a snake and that has 3 yellow, disgusting eyes that look like they're filled with pus, and he can throw it at the children, but we can't see him murder a god. Like, I just,
not in Disney's world. Disney does not want to show it because I think they want enough kids to go to it, get their mom and dads, beg them to get the merchandise, and they want it to be somewhat of a kiddie-like film, even though it shouldn't be.
Make the movie. Then don't make the movie. If you can't do justice, just like with Sam Raimi, okay, he allegedly does not like the character of Venom. He is not a fan of Venom. He said that in an article that I read years ago. He said that he wasn't really for the character, but the fans wanted the character. So a director brings Venom to life when he doesn't really like Venom, and look at what it turned into. It was an awful, disgusting representation. Topher Grace played the role. They found somebody skinnier than Tobey Maguire to look like Tobey Maguire and play this BS Venom thing. And he had long nails that looked like he just went to the spa. Like, I just...
Well, we talked about we want Tom Hardy's Venom to take out Topher Grace's Venom so they can right that wrong of Marvel.
And in the multiverse. And, I would love to see them in the Bifrost with like Tom Hardy just pushing Topher Grace's, Venom's head into the Bifrost and then throwing him to some other planet. But, there should be a universe in the multiverse of Disney's just like crappy storied movies, and this one should be thrown into it, because Love and Thunder could have been so much more if Taika Waititi allowed you to have emotion, if the movie was actually Gorr the God Butcher, if it was the real Necrosword. And like you said, why can't Disney, who's already made a deal with Sony with the Spider-Verse and whatnot, and I told you why, because they have 100% rights to Thor. So if they wrote anything in a contract with Sony, then they would have to say, we're going to give you some money in a character that we have the money for. And if anybody knows Disney, and listen, I love Disney World and all that, but if anybody knows Disney, they're about getting money, not giving it. They're about taking it, not sharing it. So they have to share it with Spider-Man because it just did too well, but they don't have to share it when it comes to Thor. But that's why you don't make the Necrosword. You call it something else. First and foremost, Gorr doesn't have a nose in the comic books, but they thought he looked too much like Voldemort, so they didn't do it. So he doesn't have a nose in the comic books. That's number one. Number two, we don't get into his scars and why he has all these scars in this movie. Number three, he doesn't have he has the Necrosword, but it's not the real Necrosword. And it's just, Gorr came into the comic books recently. If you go back and you read the comic books and you read about his story, first and foremost, it's not just his daughter, it's his daughter and his wife. I don't know why he wasn't allowed to have a wife in this movie, but we see the death of his wife and his daughter. And it's like, you changed that story in the beginning. You changed everything, and you didn't spend enough time. They're in the desert, they're walking. She says she's tired, she's dead. It's like, the emotions are way too quick. And
that was the first 30 seconds of the movie. You were walking into the theater after the contractions. First 30 seconds of the movie before they show Thor, they show her pass away in the desert. And again, you call someone a God Butcher, and that means it's gonna be violence, and they tame the violence down.
And this is the thing that I don't like. And maybe it's because Bob Chapek is now the head of Disney, and there's been a difference. That Bob Iger's not there. But when Bob Iger was there, okay, when we cut off Thanos's head in Endgame, we saw that head roll, and we saw the purple blood splatter on to Nebula. So there's no reason why they can't do this. And it frustrates me when they say, oh, we can't show the blood, or we got away with it by having the gods have gold blood, because if that was real blood splattering, it would have never happened. But here's the thing. You had all of those soldiers of Zeus being killed and their gold blood splattering everywhere. So if Gorr's killing the gods, then this is all gold blood. So you could have shown it, because you're a hypocrite by saying, well, we showed this, but we didn't show
Well,
that.
the other thing is, I guess violence and blood is an issue, and gold blood's not a big deal. But yet, it's a Disney film. But they're constantly, I know they're making jokes, and they've talked about this in the godlike world. They kept saying that if you don't agree with Zeus, the great mighty Zeus, you're not going to be invited to the orgy. But this is a Disney film, so they're allowed to talk about orgies in a Disney family-friendly movie that a kid will go see. But it's not okay to show some blood in that movie. But it's okay to talk about orgy.
Right.
They mentioned it like 7 times, by the way, in that scene.
You can talk about sex multiple times. Sex was talked about in this,
and they show his butt too. They want to show how jacked he is, and they want to make a joke when he removes his costume, basically. When Russell Crowe does this at Zeus, and luckily they didn't show Russell Crowe looking pregnant naked. No one needs to see that besides maybe his wife. Chris Hemsworth. They show his jacked body, and then they show his butt. That's also okay, but they have to tame down the violence. But everything else is okay in Disney's world.
They insinuate that his penis is out there. They show his butt. They talk about sex. Valkyrie talks about sex. Korg talks about sex.
Yeah.
I mean, sex is all throughout this entire Disney movie of Thor, Love and Thunder. Sex. But then you're talking about orgies and orgies and orgies and orgies, but then you can't show blood. So if I'm Deadpool, when this Deadpool 3 comes out, because he breaks the fourth wall, I would definitely make a joke and go, well, I'd be like, we can't show the blood, but I can talk to you about my penis. That's what I mean. If I was Deadpool, I would say that. I'd be like, you know what? I can show you my butt. I can talk to you about all the women I've slept with, but I can't kill anybody on screen. And the thing about, like, you know, and then you hear, you see these heads get cut off, but you don't see them roll. And then Natalie Portman gets to say heads will roll. So it's like, you can talk about cutting somebody's head off, you can't show it. But Thanos, we saw that in Endgame, right? We saw that head get cut off. We saw it roll. We saw the blood splatter on Nebula, like I said. But in this movie, in the beginning, when the head gets cut off of the first god that Gorr kills, and the only one we see him kill on screen, when that head gets cut off, we hear it, we don't see it. And when in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, right, when the shield goes through Captain Carter, we hear her body split, but we don't see it. And it's, you know, I mean, is this Disney's way of going now, where we see a little bit of blood, we hear things in the background, our mind has to tell us, and where are we going? And you brought up a fantastic point. If Disney can't show blood and Disney can't show violence, but they can openly talk to 4-year-olds about sex, what type of hypocrisy is that? They could tell, you know, your 5-year-old daughter about it, but they can't show a head coming off. I mean, I don't understand what the difference is between.
Oh, we also have a 2-year-old who now is into the frame. By the way, LJ wants to appear on the show. He saw the movie.
Because in true Disney fashion, I mentioned sex and the children come. But
yes, they hear the word, and it's like a siren bringing them over.
Disney's taught them when we talk about orgies, you better come to the screen. But it's you know, but that's the thing, is like, if we're Disneyfying these characters, then why are we talking about sex?
Oh, and then the other thing, what about, we were talking about the children thing. They make an obvious connection joke, which is not very funny, about kids in cages at one point with those Asgard children. That's okay in Disney World, but other things are not.
And eating children.
Yes.
They also, so we hear them talk about sex, orgies, eating children, putting kids in a cage, but we cannot show Gorr cut the head off of a god.
Yeah, I was surprised that Disney was okay with, besides the orgy stuff, the joke about the kids with kids in cages, because you know how he's, you know, Gorr is trapped, the Asgardian children. I'm like, how does that get through the Disney world that's acceptable? That type of joke, but the other stuff is not.
Yeah,
What do they decide is fair game, and what do they say is too much? That's what's interesting. I would love to know who makes that decision. Does Kevin Feige? Does he's the one who's like kids with cages? Let's go for it with that joke. That's okay, but the other stuff, no.
Is it Bob Chapek? Is it Kevin Feige? But here's the thing. And when people say, well, Dan, we can't show the blood to the children, I would say, okay, so Avengers Endgame made how much money and was how successful? This is how I'm going to define phase 4 of Marvel. Okay. Phase 4 of Marvel on the big screen, Spider-Man No Way Home. This is where we are. We're Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Thor, Love and Thunder. The best part of phase 4. Oh, I should talk about, orgies now because my nephew's on the thing. But
I'll just having a Thor battle, by the way, right now.
But to me, it's like the movies of phase 4 have plummeted since Spider-Man No Way Home, but the Disney Plus TV shows are great. And I told people, I said, if you go to Thor Love and Thunder and you're let down and you're disappointed, go home and watch Miss Marvel, because Miss Marvel is reminiscent of like what Marvel should be in the cinematic universe. I don't know if they're getting lazy. I don't know if they don't care. But the thing about Kevin Feige is you have been a genius. And now you're in phase 4 and it's like you've just lost. Like, what are you focusing on? What are you doing? You don't call somebody the God Butcher and not have them butcher gods. And the thing is, Christian Bale is such a good villain. And what did you do? Because they said in phase 2 that Marvel had a villain problem. They kill all of their villains. And you don't have an endless supply of them. So I don't know. I'm just completely thrown by the fact. And then I got to say this to you when we talk about kids and LJ being on the screen just now. You need an army of gods, and you go to Zeus and you ask him for this army of gods and he says no, and you ask him for Thunderbolt and he says no. So then for a limited time only, you empower children with the power of Thor, and somehow not a single child is killed, hurt, scratch on them. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. So in order to defeat shadow monsters, you just have to have a bunch of children with lightning.
The children will save the world. Yeah, I thought that was very Disneyfied that they were semi-heroes at the end. But yeah, that's the other interesting thing. Kevin Feige is claiming, because that's one of the core things people are saying, is it's lost its connective tissue of what is the main. You are on the back. What's the main thing they're trying to achieve? For a long time, it was Thanos, it was the gemstones, it was all these things. What is the main thing they're trying to get in these next phase of Marvel movies? He claims that there is a grand master plan that Kevin Feige and Marvel and Disney have, and that we will know soon. We don't know. The
master plan is to find out at the end of phase 4 who's truly invited to the orgy.
Yes, I guess so.
That's what it is.
What the heck is the name of that actor who's supposedly going to play Hercules, Zeus' son, who's going to come after Thor, maybe in the next movie if they get Hemsworth back? It says Thor will be back. The director is like, that's news to me when he saw it in the movie. He says, I didn't know Thor was going to be back.
He didn't know Thor was going to be back. That's because Taika Waititi's not going to be back.
Yeah, he probably will not be asked back. But then, when I saw it, nothing against that actor, besides his parents and close loved ones, no one in this world knows who that actor is. I'm like, you would think you get a major person. Maybe you could recast it later on. But if you're going to truly, maybe that was just how they wanted to end it. But if you're truly going to get Hercules in it, you have to get a big name actor to go after Thor. Hi, LJ. And instead, I'm like, who the heck is this dude? And he's just this nondescript, non-super strong guy when Hercules should be super jacked. Should look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who played Hercules years ago. And instead we got a guy, it's almost like the end of the movie when we saw Thanos for the first time. And I'm like, who the hell is that dude? And I'm like, so that was ridiculous. There was just a lot of interesting things. But you almost wonder, is that like a way to stall, like almost someone who like is like kidnapped someone and they're like, oh, we have a plan. Don't worry. We're thinking about it. And coming up with their demands, their listed demands of what they want in return to give back the person. they're basically winging it. They're doing it as they go. They don't fully know what they want to do. That Endgame was the true epitome, the peak of the Marvel movies, and now everything since it's been kind of a little bit of a letdown. Spider-Man No Way Home was great, but it's very hard to achieve the peak of Endgame with all those movies, all those years of working together in that connected tissue of the MCU. Yeah. And now he claims that you'll see our plan soon. Yeah. But I also think he might be lying. He's stalling because he doesn't know what that plan is. Even though I did see that the Russo brothers, who directed the Endgame movie and the Avengers movies, they said their passion project would be that Secret Wars movie. Yeah. That they would think that would be the way that if you want to have something that can come anywhere near where Endgame was, that's the next step to go, the logical next step. But I don't know if they're going to do that anytime soon, if the Russo brothers will be involved. And in the meantime, I think the rest of Marvel and Disney are kind of stalling because they don't really know right now what their next plan is. I know there's supposed to be a new Blade movie coming out with Mahershala Ali. There's supposed to be all these different movies, but we don't really know what their next step is, unless maybe Black Panther or one of the new movies is going to shed light on it. Yeah, who knows? I think a lot of it is a stall tactic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they know. I think Phase 4 has thrown a bunch of things at the wall.
See what's there.
They're trying to figure it out. I don't know why Marvel is, and I got to talk about another show, but they're so anti something, and I want to say it, but I can't because I don't want to spoil anything. But it's like the way that Phase 4 is like, what the hell are we doing? I mean, what are we doing? And it's like Moon Knight went in this direction, Miss Marvel went in that direction, but there's some kind of connections to them in Black Panther.
People always said Marvel and Disney had their stuff together, and DC was a train wreck. Well, they at times have seemed like a train wreck. I'm not saying Thor: Love and Thunder was not a good, was an awful movie. I don't think it was awful. I think it had its moments. There were some very funny moments. Yeah. There was a very good bad guy in it. In the limited
set up a bunch of things. They just didn't. They set it up, but they didn't knock it down.
Yeah,
Taika Waititi threw a bunch of alley-oops, but nobody dunked it. It was like, we didn't get the mighty Thor that I wanted and I hoped for. We didn't get Valkyrie enough. She didn't lick the blade, which I thought was one of the coolest things. So we didn't get to understand Valkyrie. We didn't get to understand, and there were so many plot holes of like, he needed Stormbreaker, but Thunderbolt can have the power of Stormbreaker and be like a Bifrost. Valkyrie's Pegasus can be a Bifrost. Like, what?
Did you remember with Stormbreaker and with the hammer? It's almost like he was cheating on his weapon of choice. So they gave him.
And that was a cool part. That was a cool joke. If they made the movie serious and they just had Mjolnir and Stormbreaker have emotions, that would have been enough for me. Because there was moments where I could look at this and say, as a screenwriter, like, and I, and that's something that I want to work on. I want to do, and I have had experience in, writing stories and whatnot. It's been what I've done since I was 5 years old, was to create. When I look back on this movie, there are moments where I'd say to Taika, those are good jokes. That's a light that, that brings some levity to this. I like the whole Stormbreaker thing. On the way to Gorr and the seriousness of what's going to happen, let's use this. But they went as far as they could with making it look like a symbiote. When we go to the Shadow Realm and we see like the black just kind of moving, but it's not oozing. It's more like an elephant tusk or an elephant, like it looks like kind of skin to it. So you almost make it a symbiote, but you don't. And you almost make Gorr like really bad, but you don't. And you almost give us the mighty Thor, but you don't. And you almost give us some levity in moments, but you don't. It's like Thor: Love and Thunder was a bunch of try. The movie ended. And at the end of it all, what is the point of, I mean, if I'm Idris Elba, thank you for the money. If I'm the Guardians of the Galaxy,
$10 million, please. Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy. They're in the first 5 minutes of the movie. They claim they're going to go after the other gods that are being attacked by Gorr, but they're never seen again. But it counts as a Marvel movie to their contract. So Dave Bautista as Drax, who's on his way out, and they're doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is coming out, I think, next year. Star-Lord, all those guys. Bradley Cooper as the Rocket Raccoon. They're all in another Marvel movie, but they're in it for 5 minutes. It's nice. I Am Groot, who's going to have his own like kiddie series on Disney+. Vin Diesel, I'm sure they love cashing the paychecks, but they're barely in the movie, and they supposedly were going to go off on their own adventure to go protect gods, and we never saw it. So who knows? They might make a passive reference in the next Guardians movie. But it was very weird. I don't know.
It's Disney. They're going to say, oh, we went to those 1,000+ distress calls. and we fought Gorr, but we can't show it. So like,
Yeah, like
defeated Gorr every time.
it's tough. Like they showed some very fun moments, and it was cool. I didn't expect them to be in the movie for too long because it's not a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It was cool to see them for in it at all, but they were in it just briefly. They also make Thor to seem kind of like a male bimbo, as Jerry Seinfeld used to call it, a mimbo, where he's really gotten very kind of stupid at this point, and I think he kind of knows it. It's almost like he's in on the joke, or the director wanted to like tease him that Chris Hemsworth's Thor is full of himself, even though he gets emotional and cares about Jane and all, and wants to protect children. So that there's good stuff there. And then even in the end was kind of nice. Another spoiler that they get to, even though after he loses Jane, he doesn't have a purpose. He gets to basically be a dad. He's Uncle Thor. He's got, Gorr asks him at the end, "Will you watch over my daughter?" So he gets to watch over love.
Story, because now she's the physical embodiment of eternity, which begs the question: Is eternity here anymore? One of these giant background characters of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that goes beyond all realms of like what you typically would think about, Celestials and Eternals, and now eternity is on a different tier. Now is she inside of this character that they call love, and love is an embodiment in the comic books, but it's not the same as eternity. So
she has powers. It looks like at the end that the two of them are good.
Getting rid of, like, you're introducing these massive elements, but then you're changing everything. You changed Gorr, you changed the Necrosword, you changed eternity. What are you doing? Why are you bringing this stuff in to change it? I don't understand it.
Because then you wonder if the next movie, it also depends how long it will be to the next one, how old she'll get, if they keep the same actress. She's a little girl in this, but it looks like, they have things that a parent can relate with their young child. Thor is basically now like a dad, like a stepdad to her, and trying to beg her to wear the boots. She doesn't want to wear the boots. They fight over the shoes, silly arguments. She's coloring and like really making it all pretty and princess like his hammer. And he's still, he's annoyed, but he still loves her. So he's willing to put up with the shenanigans. But then she has some sort of powers, because it looks like at the end, the two of them, maybe she goes to school on the side, but she's going to fight with her dad, her new stepdad. She knows that Gorr the Butcher was her dad and cares about the dad. And they get to have one very brief moment saying that "I missed you," Christian Bale said, and he loves her. And then asks Thor, basically, "Can you watch over my daughter like your own?" So he's gonna, at least it gives him purpose that Thor is now become a dad, which he wanted to have a kid with Jane, but Jane's now passed away. Maybe they'll meet in Valhalla one day when Thor's story is over. Who knows? Or maybe no, in Disney that will never be complete, that story. But now they're supposed to going to fight crime together and fight villains. And then in the meantime, he's going to teach her life lessons and be her dad. So that was an interesting idea. And Love and Thunder, you think romantic comedy that he wanted to make that was more about Jane, the two Thors, Jane and regular Thor. But instead, at the end, it becomes they had their love, but it's Thor and the little girl who's love. So that's it.
And that destroys the mighty Thor too, and that destroys Dr. Jane Foster. That at the end of the movie, you find Taika Waititi as Korg stating they've been called a lot of things, but they're known, by some as Love and Thunder. And now it's like the whole story the whole time was about the girl. So it was always about Gorr's daughter. It was never about Jane. So it's like you make a movie and it's not about,
I thought it was about Jane.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not about Jane. It's not about Valkyrie. It's not, it's just so stupid. And they cut everything off. They bring everything in. It's like going down a bunch of roads that lead to dead ends and they're all cliffs. And it's like, well, which one am I going to drive off? Like, they bring so many elements. You go to Omnipotent City. And when you go to Omnipotent City and you see all these gods, you don't reach out into this. There's two Celestials that are looking through the window. They don't talk about why are they there. I mean, it's just, they show you all of these different things and all of these different moments, and that's it. And if Gorr's taking all these children as hostages, why does he not get in touch with Thor through a dream or some type of connection and hold one of the kids up and say, like, I'm going to start cutting off heads here. I'm going to start. He just takes the kids with him everywhere he goes. Why would he take the kids to eternity? Why is he bringing the children everywhere he goes? And he's stealing all of the children, and none of these kids try to get. There's so
they
many
had
plot holes
son.
in this
They
movie.
had the son of Idris Elba's character that he's kind of become the leader of the children, and maybe they'll turn into a grown-up Asgardian army.
And how does
one day.
he know how to use Stormbreaker like his dad if his dad didn't teach him that?
Yeah, it's another plot hole. I don't know. My mindset is if I had to give this movie 1 being the worst, 10 being the highest, it's not a 1 or 2. It's not terrible. It's not like Punisher Warzone or like a really terrible movie, but it's more in the middle of the pack. If I had to go from 1 to 10, I'd give it a 6.2. It has a lot of potential. You give it a 3, that's really bad. I'd say, because I watch those pizza reviews with Dave Portnoy on Barstool Sports every night on YouTube. I give decimal points because that's a rookie score. He says if you give a full score, you have to give decimal points. I give it a 6.2. It had some very good elements, some emotional elements, some funny elements. Some of the jokes were hilarious. Even the joke again was kind of like a reference that Korg is gonna have a boyfriend who's like Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Like that was kind of humorous. So I thought there was some good action, great bad guy, but he was misused. And then there was some really good elements to it. But if I had to go, there was just a lot of potential, but it didn't live up to it. As you said, they threw a lot on the storyboard and so on the wall and see what stuck. So there's a lot of good ideas, but if I had to go, I would say anyone who says this is a great Marvel movie, it's not. I don't agree with. I think it's better than Thor: The Dark World. I think though it's behind the regular first Thor movie. I think Thor Ragnarok is the best of all the Thor movies. And then I would go with the first Thor movie. I would put this just slightly above Thor: The Dark World, which I thought was a terrible movie. But I'd give this a 6.2, and that might be with rose-colored glasses because I had a fun time going to the movies with my 5-year-old daughter, my 2.5-year-old son. Getting to hang out with you, buddy, was a cool experience. In the luxury recliners, the Cinemark. So I had a great time. We got to escape the 90-degree heat in Scranton, PA. So it was a fun time, and we got to McDonald's toys along the way with Thor. But if I had to give them a score, and maybe this is a little bit of a friendly score, because there was good elements of it, it just didn't live up to the sum of its parts didn't live up to the elements they were trying to show you in the film or not show in the movie. I'd give it at best a 6.2 out of 10.
I appreciate your score. And so this is I'm going to say why, and then I'm going to give my score. So you don't, to kind of sum it all up, you don't say why Jane picks Mighty. We don't see her turn into Thor. You say it's for the big reveal that you already showed in the previews. Gorr the God Butcher doesn't butcher more than one god on screen. We don't really see much of anything from the distress calls. They must have had an endless supply of money because you brought Lady Sif in, you paid her. You brought Kat Dennings in, you paid her. You brought in the scientist that gets taken over by Loki.
Yeah.
You bring it to Eric Selvig in. You
and by the way, Lady Sif, I think her arm that gets ripped off, but she lives. Spoiler alert. That should have been floated in Valhalla. That should have been floated in Valhalla, waving with Jane, with Mighty Thor in Valhalla.
Welcomes her to Valhalla. In true, see, this is the thing with Taika Waititi. Taika Waititi wasn't Taika Waititi enough.
That would have been a funny joke. Because
he's all about jokes. So when you have a serious moment of Idris Elba saying "Welcome to Valhalla," there should have been the hand of Lady Sif waving to her, and that's awesome. How it should have ended. But I mean, again, so we see. Okay, so all the things that I said, plus the fact that Korg's death isn't a death. So again, another emotion that's not emotional. Zeus isn't dead. So whatever. Yes, father. The
his accent was incredible, and then like him being very like dainty with the skirt and his big pregnant belly was hilarious. Russell Crowe was looking like he was having the time of his life. He was funny, whether it was intentional or not. He was very goofy in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Russell Crowe is like Russell Brand. I felt like, and there's my niece. Hello, Miss.
Yeah, there's our 5-year-old. Lily says hi.
Again, we talk about the man of orgies, and the children appear again. So
they just appear. They flock to
it. Disney is the one thing that Disney's working is when you talk about orgies, the children will come. And and then Disney's like, get them in the cages. But it's but the reality of it all, when you look at this, is all the things that I was saying before. We didn't get Jane's full story. We don't get to see Jane. I would like to see Jane as the Mighty Thor in more than one movie. I want to learn more about Valkyrie. I want to learn more about everything that's going on. Everything's just a stupid joke. Meek was in the movie for 5 seconds. Korg. And this is the thing. Taika Waititi loves himself some Taika Waititi. Is he Cam Newton? Because he's Korg. So he's directing his movie. He is the voice of his own movie. He can't die in his own movie. And he's in the movie like as much as Thor, pretty much. And then, so we see all of that. What is Eternity's story? Has Eternity given up her place in the universe and now she's just going to be a kid? The children not having but a scratch or a bruise on them from killing all these shadow monsters, Gorr not being the true villain that I think he should be, the Necrosword not being the Necrosword, and on and on and on and on. The Guardians not having any purpose in this. It's almost like Kevin Feige went to Taika Waititi and said, well, we didn't know what to do with Thor at the end of Endgame, and we had to send all of our heroes apart. So we sent them with the Guardians, and we need you to button up that loose end. So let's just have 5 minutes with the Guardians, and then we can move them out. I mean, I would have done what Sony did with a couple of their villains, which is like, they didn't even have Sandman and the Lizard on screen. They were using like elements from they didn't even have them there with them. It was like they're using pieces, so they don't necessarily have to pay them as much and whatnot. I would have just had the Guardians in all this cutting room floor stuff, and I would just juxtapose them into the planet so that I wouldn't have to pay them as much, because to me, it's the Guardians had no purpose. Idris Elba had no purpose. And and again, I mean, if
they did have a purpose. They collected paychecks. They did.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is, it's like you bring all these people in with no reason, and I'm not trying to knock. I mean, obviously, Idris Elba is welcoming you to the Valhalla, but what I'm saying is the scene's too short. It's not enough. We don't see Odin. I mean, at this point, why don't you just pay everybody? It's like Thor: Love and Thunder was trying to max out like Avengers Endgame and have 50 characters in it. But what did it, your Idris was in there for 2 seconds. So I don't get that side of it. So with everything going on and everything they started but didn't finish and everything they left on the cutting room floor and Gorr not being a true God butcher, I give this movie a 3.7. And I think Thor: The Dark World is better than this movie.
What would you give Dark World?
I would honestly give The Dark World somewhere in like the 5 to 6 range, because
you're very generous. I think that's a 3.7.
No, and the reason, and I'm going to tell you the reason why, because it stayed more true to the feeling of the first Thor.
That's true.
Because Odin was in it, because Loki was in it, because Loki dies the first time in it, because we got the Reality Stone in it.
The tone of the movie is similar to the first, and then the new comedy direction, which was okay in the third one because there still was a lot of great action in it, and there was a Hulk, and Hulk was in it. It was a good bad guy. Kate Blanchett played.
Yeah, we
have a Hulk. The Hulk is pretty cool. I still remember from the Avengers when Hulk punched Thor out and showed how mighty he is compared to the mighty God of Thunder. That was an epic scene. And he beat the heck out of Loki. I remember the first Avengers, and then I do think he punches Thor out. So I thought Ragnarok did a better job with sprinkling humor, and then there was just overused humor in this one, in the fourth one. But you're right, the tone of the movie is similar. The kids have gone kind of crazy. They're like climbing me as we speak. I think that thing is getting them very excited that you have on camera, that toy.
So I mean, listen, I think if we could put a meme together, I think that we should take Hulk from the first Avengers movie and have him grab this Thor. Like when he grabbed Loki and he throws him back and forth and says puny God. I think that Hulk should grab this Thor: Love and Thunder movie, bang it back and forth like he did with Loki, and say puny movie and throw it away. This movie should have been so much more. They didn't do Natalie Portman's return justice. They didn't give a reason why we have Love and Thunder. It was a whole lot of setups. It was like, Taika Waititi being a comedian, it was like a whole lot of setups to a joke that had no punchline. So you brought us there. You brought us to Omnipotent City, but you didn't finish it. You brought us to the Shadow Realm, but you didn't finish it. This movie did not stay true to the comic books. It did not stay true to where we were going. It gave us no direction. It left us hanging. And you know what Marvel has a problem with right now? Their end of credit scenes absolutely, genuinely, positively suck. And they
set up the next movie. Now they're just like weird, goofy ones that were on the cutting room floor.
They're unnecessary things. And Disney Plus, this is what I'm going to say. The only thing that came good out of Phase 4 besides Spider-Man No Way Home is, is that Disney Plus, their end credit scenes are great. Disney Plus, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier end credit scene, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier end credit title, the Moon Knight series, the Miss Marvel series. There's so many things. I think if Disney was just Disney Plus, then it's good. And they get darker on Disney Plus than they do in the movie theater now. If you're going to cheese it up and you're going to Barney this thing, then just stop making the movies. Thor Love and Thunder could have been so much better than what it was. And I want to see the mighty Thor. I want to see her have a better story, and Gorr the God Butcher. I've seen a lot of Thor. I want to see the mighty Thor. I want to see Gorr the God Butcher. And I love kids, and I love being an uncle to many, but I'm sorry, having a little girl grab her pet or her bunny stuffed animal and use the power of Thor, I felt like I was watching Fortnite on the screen. I felt like I was watching Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever the heck it is. So, I mean, it was just not what it was supposed to be. So, Ross, my final thing about Thor Love and Thunder, post Thor Love and Thunder, how do we fix the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Now that this has been made and it's canon, how do we fix it?
My mindset would be almost to take the Disney out of Marvel, but that's never going to happen unless the backlash from the fans are so immense that they stop making as much money. This movie's making a ton of money. As long as they make the money, they're going to continue this formulaic story. So hey, Elja, I don't think there is a true fix. And I think the only thing you could do is get back to your roots a little bit, have mix in a little bit of humor, but it should be sprinkled in humor, not 80% of your movie, and try to stick more to the true kind of filmmaking that they're doing on the Disney Plus side, which seems more like an independent film version of a superhero, and more realistic kind of superheroes rather than the over the top what they're trying to do and throwing so much on the movie screen. I think you need, as you said, you got to go closer to what Disney Plus is doing and maybe get edgier, more independent film directors, and hopefully Disney can kind of stay out of it a little bit. But as of now, I think we're whether it's right or wrong, Disney is fully in charge of what's happening. Kevin Feige probably has to do whatever they tell him to do within reason. And I think we're going to be in a few more head scratches before it gets better. Hopefully Black Panther Wakanda Forever is better, but I think we're going to have a few issues for a while.
I think after all of this, like Kevin Feige, we're going to and I feel like we're going to see Kang the Conqueror, and then Kevin Feige is going to go, look, see, I was setting you up for this. And I'm like, no, you were setting us up for nothing. You're just trying to save your behind on this. But why pay all these actors and actresses money? Like, listen, get yours. If I'm Idris Elba, give me that check for that end credit scene. But I just don't understand. Will we ever see Valhalla again? Does that mean that Jane can come back? Does that mean that Idris can come back? I mean, I will tell you that my favorite parts of this movie are Axel, which is Heimdall's son. My favorite parts of this movie is that we have a new Heimdall. So I love that part. I love that we got to see Mjolnir break apart like that. I thought that was cool. I thought seeing Celestials was cool again. I like Valkyrie, and I think she's a badass. I thought that was cool. And, you know, I love the Byfrost. So I think there's an element to that. But there's really not a lot of things I take home with me. If this movie was never made, and I feel like, you know, I honestly feel like they need to just like retcon this movie and try again. And you have time between now and Wakanda Forever. So we'll see what you can do. But please don't bring in Gorr the God Butcher if you're not going to start killing stuff. So
if you're knocking the movie like that, you're disinvited to the orgy. So Dan, no orgy for you. That's your punishment.
Yeah, I'm totally fine not being invited to an orgy with Russell Crowe. And I think I'll find a way to be okay.
You don't know until you experience the Russell Crowe experience.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be all right. So with that being said, you know, we've learned from Thor, it's okay to put children in cages and from time to time eat them. But we cannot show God blood. This is Thor Love and Thunder. I'm not here to be negative. I'm here to be impartially honest.
Disney and Marvel, who you love so much.
I love it. I'm a Marvel fan. Listen, I got the friggin' family tree here. So
We want these movies to be the best they can be for all the diehard Marvel and superhero fans. So this is correct, constructive criticism that we're giving. I still think it was mediocre at best. It had some great parts. Christian Bale, I would love to see more as a bad guy do his thing because he was amazing in his little part. Some of the jokes were good, too many jokes, and again, in the end, it's just too many things that they do not fulfill, and they don't give you the right sense of closure by movie's end. Even the sad parts, you don't truly experience them or fully could appreciate them because of all the stuff they gave you and all the jokes and all that. But in the end, it was a blast seeing the movie with you and the kids, and it was great. It was like old times. So hopefully we can see the next Marvel movie. Hopefully we can see Wakanda Forever come November 11th, and we can see some more superhero movies together with the kids because I think that would be a great time. And love you, buddy. And remember, no orgy for you. Like no soup for you. Like Seinfeld, no orgy for you.
We spent a decade building up Thanos, and Gorr is a god butcher. He's more powerful than Thanos, and he was killed in 2 hours. So with that being said, we need...
Though his daughter, who right now looks like a good guy, what about if Love, though, the only thing I'll add to it is, what about if she, for a future movie, turns evil, kind of like the dad? Maybe the God Butcher, even though they'll mess it up, she could be turned into the God Butcher like the dad in a way, and maybe will become a villain one day. You never know. She could turn into a villain one day. That could be interesting, but knowing Marvel, they'll mess that up.
All I'm going to say is Christian Bale yelling at Shane on set was a scarier villain than Gorr the God Butcher. With that being said, this is our Thor: Love and Thunder spoiler review. Man, I wish this movie was better, but what gives me hope is I have loved the Disney Plus shows, and Miss Marvel to me was the movie that hasn't been made yet, and I can't wait to see her on screen in the Marvels. Ross, as always, thank you for Superpowered Pop. Go to superpoweredpop.com. You can see the links on our social media at Superpowered Pop on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to this video and so many others. And we look forward to talking with you soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and always, God bless, no stress, do your best. No orgy for me. I'm totally fine with that. Thanks, Ross. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. You'll get the next one.